We are live on YouTube, and UGTV will be going live in about a minute.
Thank you.
All right, are we a go?
Yes, we are, Mayor. I believe we're live.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, commissioners, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom or by phone. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so that the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and his current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Now call the meeting to order. I'd ask the clerk to read the call.
Roll call. Burrows,
Here.
Townsend,
Here.
McKiernan,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Barkley,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
Philbrook,
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any revisions to tonight's meeting?
Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet was distributed on Friday, and in that blue sheet, it provided additional information regarding the CARES Act funding, the submissions for the municipalities resolution, an education resolution, and a nonprofit resolution. Also, Mr. Mayor, a clarification was sent out today, and that clarification was in regards to the nonprofit resolution Exhibit 1, and the change is limited to adjusting project descriptions to align them with the project name and does not adjust the allocations to any of the listed agencies.
Thank you. So our only item tonight is the CARES Act funding. I would ask Commissioner Markley, Chair of the CARES Act Subcommittee, to make some opening remarks and introduce staff. Chairman Markley.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say first, thank you to the committee members and the staff members who have worked on this. It has really been a marathon, and a marathon where the course that we were running seemed to change daily. This committee met almost daily for several weeks and several hours in each of those meetings. In addition, they did hours and hours of homework as every committee member reviewed every application and scored it on a scoring matrix. So it was certainly a lot of work, and everyone has been very dedicated. We had a great committee, and I appreciate their work very much. For some of us on the committee, our work is nearly done, but I will recognize it for staff. The fun is just beginning as they will continue to track and monitor the allocations that we approved tonight. They will report back to my standing committee. This committee was formed out of that standing committee with additional members, and they will be reporting to that standing committee regularly. So for commissioners and the public, if you're interested in seeing future updates on the CARES Act allocation tracking, those will come to the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee in the future. And our committee members that are not members of that standing committee will get those packets for review. With that, I'm going to turn it over to staff to do a presentation about our resolutions tonight.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Markley. This is Crystal Sprague. I'm the CARES Act team lead. Commissioners, I'm going to share my screen with you so that you'll be able to see our presentation tonight. All right. So first, I want to say thank you so much to the committee and to staff who have just worked around the clock, it seems like, on massive amounts of information, as I'm sure that you felt when you received your packets on Friday night. We have had a tremendous amount of information that's been given to us and that we have been able to turn around and get out the door. But with that tremendous amount of information and in our haste to get them out to you Friday night for review, I'd like to echo what the clerk mentioned. We did have an adjustment to Exhibit 1 under the resolution for proposed funding for the allocations for the 501c3s. That amendment was to program descriptions, as they did not align well with the program names. No discrepancies were found in the applicant scores, proposed allocations, or original funding request amounts. Late this afternoon, we did send you an additional revised Exhibit 1B under the resolution for proposed funding allocations for municipalities and health department. Today, we were able to isolate that we had 3 missing entries from which the planning committee considered and made allocations for, and those applications included Turner Vibrant Health, KVC Hospital, and an application for KU. Those were absent from the first round of documentation that you received on Friday. In addition, we would revise the recommendation for 3 applicants that were listed incorrectly on Exhibit 1B and not as the planning committee had adopted on Friday morning. That would be application 178, application 44, and application 68. There was some adjustments made during the meeting and adopted on Friday by the planning committee that were not reflected in your documentation that you received on Friday. The record of the meeting was reviewed thoroughly to confirm that the planning committee's actions on these exhibits were adjusted accordingly, and any adjustments are notated on the revised exhibits. So with that, I will get right to our presentation for today. Just a reminder that we did follow the planning committee's funding priorities, which aligned with the state SPARK committee and recovery office committees, and those are listed here. On July 30th, we brought to you a funding allocation recommendation, which you see before you, and that funding allocation was adopted by the full commission on 7/30 of 2020. If you can believe it, that's only been 10 days ago. Since that time, the municipalities, government, and health departments have been frantically working at realigning their requests to match this allotment, as well as the planning committee, as Commissioner Markley said, has met several times. They scored more than 80 applications in a series of days, and we're ready to present that information to you today. As a reminder, anything that we submit to the Recovery Office has the final approval of the Governor's Spark Task Force and Recovery Office. So even if you see allocations or a program set forth today, we believe and we are putting forward our best belief that these would qualify for funding under the CARES Act, but the state holds the final decision. So we'll jump right into the first resolution, and commissioners will be going in resolution order today and exhibit order. So if you'd like to follow along, this is the resolution adopting the funding for municipalities and health department. You see before you a adjusted department request from the health department. This is a request that aligns with the allotment that they were given on July the 30th. The public health response grants that were previously under 501c3s have been adjusted to fit underneath the health department in the amount of $2.1 million. We believe that scaling the WYCO Connects, and I will say supported by the health department administration, scaling the WYCO Connects program to align with the required incurred by December 30th deadline for the state recovery office allowed these additional public response grants to fit under the health department. We believe that's the best strategy based on the timeline, and it will allow us to monitor those health interventions in a more realistic way. The health department request for direct aid moving forward from August 1 to December 30th has a strong focus on lab fees and testing capacity. And then in Exhibit 1B, you'll see those public health response organizations listed by application number and name. The application fits best under public health goals. The committee believed that this was the best place for them to be scored, and the applications were all scored by the planning committee. This gives us a better ability to measure the impact under this goal, and we're better able to spot areas of potential collaboration or overlap in services. We'll go a little further and deeper when we get to education in 5013, what this score here means on the top right corner of your page. But this is a composite score from each one of the raters who rated these applications. You'll see the award amount or the allocation amount and the original request amount. Next, we have Exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 is the City of Bonner Springs. You have the initial request listed from the City of Bonner Springs and the adopted request on July the 30th, and the adjustments that the City of Bonner Springs has made in order to fit that revised adoption amount. Exhibit 3 is the same from Edwardsville with the initial request and the adopted request as allocated by the funding formula at $449,400. And the additions or reductions that Edwardsville has elected to make. I will note with Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3, both Edwardsville and Bonner will be presenting these to their city council and adopting a resolution similar to the resolution that this governing body adopted for Wyandotte County. That is expected to happen, I believe, tonight. I think that they're in meeting tonight and they plan to adopt or hope to adopt this type of funding application along with the resolution. And then lastly, we have Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 covers Kansas City, Kansas, and the County of, the CARES Act team, and reimbursements. For Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, the reimbursements are projected as such. Personnel at $3.8 million, and this would be for the reimbursable period of March 1 through July 31st. We project contractual and commodities at 1.0. with a total projection of $4.9 million for reimbursement. You've seen this slide before, as well as the slide listed below or the graphic listed below, which lists out pay codes for the individual groupings. The unified government began to track COVID leave and COVID overtime immediately upon the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic to give us a really good understanding of how much time staff was expending on COVID-related activities. I will mention here that although we see personnel at $3.8 million projected between March 1 and July 31st, we do anticipate there will be some elements of these leave codes that are not applicable or will not be approved through the recovery office at the state of Kansas. And that is mainly due to the adjustment in the definition for what can be reimbursable under personnel payroll and the burden that we must meet that says that the person must be substantially dedicated. It was an early on decision to track individual hours by employees. So if we have an employee who worked, for example, 3 or 4 hours of a week on COVID-related activities, they likely will not qualify to be reimbursed under personnel here. So we do expect some slight adjustment to that personnel column. We are continuing, although our projections have been pretty spot on, to monitor contractual and commodity as we close out the month of July. And we do expect this to vary just slightly, but that would be our projected number. If it varied, we would be decreasing, not increasing. And then the Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County Direct Aid. This would be for the period we are asking for programming or assistance to help recovery and response through Kansas City, Kansas, or Wyandotte County throughout the period of time, but August 1 through December 30. I give you a really, really high level vantage point here in your exhibit. It's spelled out a little bit more clearly what each one of these programs are. I will note that they're divided by city and county investment. You will see some departments that are a split, a 60-40 split, a 70-30 split. We've done our best to stay with the major function of that department, but realize that we might have some overlap. The other thing I would draw your attention to is we do have public health department listed here, although they are encapsulated in Exhibit 1. We have them listed here so that we can truly track the county investment, But without the health department, you'll see that the county investment or the county response would need to be about $6.5 million. And then the CARES team is listed here below. The initial request was $488,000. That's been reduced. And like many of these asks have been reduced, one of our attempts is to gather all the technology pieces from inside each one of these asks so that we might be able to get a better purchase price on those technologies pieces that are put into place or requested so that staff can work remotely if necessary. That is the same case here in the CARES Act response team. We're hoping to be able to at least get a 5 to 10% savings on those technology items by ordering them in bulk.
Crystal, just a quick note on back to the previous slide, the sound house, the first column there is what the original request was from the department, and then the second column is the recommended allocation. Again, that's true for both the city side here and for the county side.
Alan, thanks for pointing that out. Yes, I do see that they're not strong column headings here. This first column here, as Mr. House said, is the request from the department, and the second column is the actual allocation or the adjustment, just as you saw in Bonner Springs or Edwardsville, as there was an attempt to reduce where we could, find overlap in services, maybe see if something was actually a reimbursement. So this is the actual allocation amount underneath the funding guidelines that were previously adapted. So we'll take a little break and talk a little bit about how we scored applications as a group. And I give you a little bit of a sampling here. Each applicant or subrecipient filled out an application. That application was then in turn replicated in the ability to rate the strengths and maybe areas of improvement where the planning team thought independently there could be some improvement on the application, or maybe the application didn't quite meet the eligibility requirements. So I've given you 3 out of the 10 questions here just as an example. Question 3, based on the applicant's response, I believe the request meets the CARES Act eligibility requirements as we know them today. And each rater or each planning committee team member was able to rate each individual application 1 through 5, with 1 receiving the lowest score, 5 receiving the highest. Number 6 is another example. I believe the applicant can accomplish their goals or make the purchases within the required time frame. This is a really important question when it comes to the State Recovery Office eligibility, but these funds or projects have to be completed no later than December 30th. So this was something that your planning committee was really digging through applications to see if we could get a good understanding if the plan was to complete that item or expend that money on goods or services before December 30th. And then the last sample question that you will see here, and again, it was 1 through 10. They had a lot of applications to rate, so we stopped at 10. But number 10 is a recommended funding or proposed funding amount based on the application, giving each rater the opportunity to say what rate of funding they would recommend that the particular application received. So we had 83 plus applications, 8 voting members. Each one of the voting members had not only the scoring guide, but access to all submitted documents and the application submitted by the subrecipient. We used a composite score, meaning that we reviewed each individual question by each individual rater and elected a composite score that would give us a quick snapshot of where each one of those applications fell in relation to each other. We used the last question to determine recommended funding levels as a group. And just as a reminder, the score guide was used as a decision guide for discussion and gave us an opportunity to really see where those applications shook out in merit and eligibility. So this is a lot of information, but this is what your planning committee was reviewing as they were making their funding decisions. And we like to call this allocations informed with data. So on the very first column here is the application number, and this is an example or a sample with the total bucket for this particular sample being $2.6 million. You'll see the type of organization listed here to the left. And the attempt was to provide a couple of different mechanisms to use the composite score and rate the individuals on the composite score with a 100% funding. And then if we incorporated the recommended funding on that question 10, then we gave the committee a space here to have discussion and make adjustments where necessary. And what you see, the green to yellow to red, is the burn rate of that particular bucket. So your planning committee knew when they ran out of money based on this type of methodology versus this type of taking the percent of recommended funding into question, and then what it would look like if we made some slight adjustments based on individual input through discussion. So I know that's a lot to look at, but your planning team had one of these for every type of application that they received, and we're able to make those determinations and get to the best possible result for our community. So using that type of methodology, we look at Education Exhibit 1. The initial request for education was $9.3 million. And the approved allotment or allocation was 2.6. And I go back to the approved allotment from July the 30th. You'll see a similar slide here that you saw with the medical group, listing all the applicants to the left, their composite score in the second column, their allocation amount based on vote from the planning committee, and the original request amount. So that's Exhibit 1 under the education resolution. And before we go into the 501c3s, I might want to go back and stop, since we are at a nice break, to consider the first resolution with the exhibits for municipalities. And I would ask whether or not action would want to be taken on the first resolution we have presented before we move into education.
I would ask Commission any comments or questions. Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I would like to ask Crystal to go back to the beginning slide. Let's see, one more at least. Sorry, keep going. That one. So this is the slide where I need clarification on the county column in terms of the dollar amount that we've allocated specifically to Wyandotte County. Because
Sure.
It says to me 1.479 million, correct?
That's correct.
And if you move slides forward several, I think where I'm having some right there, I thought I heard Alan say that the right-hand column was the allocation. So these departments are not necessarily broken up by whether they are a city or a county department. For example, my specific question is with the Parks and Rec line. That must be on the city side, correct?
We have it listed here as a county-wide agency, but it's one of those departments similar to, say, the finance office, in which most of the funding is broken down by the percent of time that office works or that service is provided to city or county. Parks and Rec is listed here just for ease of listing them here, but I could absolutely see where, Commissioner, that you would see that they would fit better under the city side. And we can definitely make some of those adjustments, because it's not lost on us that the allocation for the county is 1.4, and the county investment without the health department here is listed at 6.5. In the limited time frame that we had, as you know, the budget office spends months and months and months dividing up different services to make sure that the appropriate budget is set aside for city and county during the budgetary process. In this particular example, with the speed at which we needed to put these documents together, this is where staff recommended that the Parks and Rec Department sit, at least for the visual of seeing the county investment.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'm asking more as a matter of, you know, being very, very clear for our public that, you know, for example, the appraiser's office is a county function, et cetera, and identifying whether the functions shown on this slide are in fact city or county functions. And so I appreciate what you're saying. At the same time, I want to be crystal clear for our entire community. The county of Wyandotte's total allocation is 1.4 million countywide for the county side departments. And then I just had one other comment that probably will be echoed repeatedly as we move our way through the rest of this presentation, but I really want to thank Julianne Van Loo with our Unified Government Public Health Department for taking the 501c3 related health requests away from the 501c3 bucket and taking them into the allocation that we had agreed on with public health, because had she not done that, our task in allocating funds to the 501c3s would have been almost impossible. And so what you're seeing here is that these are nonprofit organizations and they applied as 501c3s, but our public health department encumbered these within the dollars that had been allocated to public health. And so that moved these requests out of our small bucket for the rest of the 501c3 organizations that we were trying to support. And that's what allowed us to make allocations to everyone else. So again, thank you to Julianne Van Loo. And that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion for the municipality's resolution that includes Health Department, Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, and the Board of Public Utilities.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Ramirez.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ramirez. Did we have a second?
Markley, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Burrows,
Aye.
Commissioner Burrows,
I'm sorry, I said aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. We now go to the education resolution. Crystal again.
So just to recap, the Education Exhibit 1 is listed here with a total approved allocation or allotment at $2.6 million. The education dollars are listed here for the allotment and the request on the far right side. And Mayor, that's the totality of the second resolution.
Thank you. I entertain any questions. I do have a question. Looking at the request from Kansas City, Kansas Community College, the award was for $900,000. The request was for $4.1 million. Anything in general we need to know about the significant gap?
Mayor, I would say that we were able to look at and I say we, the planning committee was able to take into evaluation how many dollars of CARES Act funding each one of the organizations had previously received. And then we went by the scores where each planning team member was able to score those applications. And as you can see, the Kansas City, Kansas Community College application scored at a 39, where many other applications scored at a higher percentage. And perhaps one of the team members on the line would be able to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, Mayor, I think really probably the biggest explanation is we we couldn't give them $4 million. So that was just the reality. But yes, I think there were parts of the application that were more closely aligned to our higher priorities as a committee and as I think a government at this stage. There were other things in the application that were wonderful ideas and that we would have loved to have funded. But because not all parts of the application were sort of in that higher priority grouping, that's why we awarded not the entire amount or a lesser amount than what was requested. You'll also see KU Med made some significant requests. Same sort of circumstance. We didn't have enough money to allocate to everyone in this category. So we had to look at the application and how it was going to impact our residents here in this county, and how closely it aligned to the goals of this committee, which, you know, the highest priority was related specifically to protecting public health. So that's really what this committee was looking at and how we were evaluating these applications as we went through the scoring process and then as we allocated dollars.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right. Seeing no more questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Bynum, move to approve.
I'm not seeing hands.
This is Commissioner Bynum. I'll move to approve.
Markley, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrick,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the nonprofit resolution. Crystal again.
Mayor, Commissioners, I would say that this was the most challenging funding, as we had the most amount of applications, the largest request, and the most valuable innovative ideas presented, as well as just very, like we talked about on July 30th, just some really pragmatic ways to help our community. So I know that this was the most difficult, the most thought-provoking conversation that we had, and some of it was just scale, the just sheer number of applications that we had. So the initial request minus the medical requests that were moved to the health department or the medical allocation, the initial request in this group was $11.8 million. The approved allotment was 3.7. It was actually a little under 3.7, but there were a few dollars left in the educational allotment that the group decided and voted to move to the 501c3 allotment, making it $3.754 million. And we have several slides here, 3 of which contain the information that was presented in your Exhibit 1. They are in score order, so you'll see the first application receiving a 49 out of a 50 on the score. And you'll see several applications here that the committee elected to fund or recommend funding at 100%. Just give you some ideas about what some of these applications are. Application number 62 was a very pragmatic approach to helping folks out with food baskets. If we look down a little bit further to Avenue of Life, application 218 really focused at wraparound services for many, many members in their community. And this was a very innovative approach to, or what the committee found an innovative approach to wraparound services with many different organizations involved. Slide 2 of 3, and you can tell how tight some of these scores were. Lists applications as varied from our religious community to the farm school at Gibbs Road. And slide 3 of 3, We'll give you a second to look at that. And again, some of these applications were not funded based on recommendations from the planning committee and scoring, noticing time frame, noticing things for eligibility, what would be considered eligible based on the Treasury's response. So with the conclusion of the 5013 applications, Mayor, I will mention, Commission, I will mention that with those 3 areas of funding, the taxable entities are educational, the health and human services, and building resiliency in the community. The group was able to set aside $9 million of the CARES Act funding to go into those 3 funding priorities and go straight into our community. And Mayor, that's all I have on that resolution, resolution number 3 presented tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to thank the committee for what I know had to be an overwhelming task in such a short time, but nevertheless, they rose to it clearly. So thank you. I have some questions, and I think Madam Clerk has already referred to this, and maybe Ms. Sprague, but I'm looking at the original for this application, and I noticed that with respect to a couple of individuals or organizations, there was apparently a mix-up with names and the detail provided. So I just want to make sure if you could put those exhibits up again, Ms. Sprague, how this looks. And I tell you, I'm looking particularly for, I see it there, 176, Young Women on the Move. I verified with their director that they did request 20,000. The description on what we were initially given did not coincide with what they told me they were about, or what it, what they had asked for with regard to rents and something else, utility assistance. So maybe that's been corrected.
Yes, Commissioner, we did absolutely have a sorting error on our exhibit before we sent it out on Friday, and our haste to get it out to you as quickly as we possibly could after the committee's final recommendations. We had not aligned the description appropriately with the individual application number. That did not impact the composite score, the recommended award, or the original request for any of the 501c3 organizations, but it did misalign the description. That was published this morning, I believe, at about 12:30, and we certainly wish we could have had a little bit more time to double check and apologize for that inconvenience, not only for our commissioners, but also for our citizens and applicants who were reviewing that as I would have been reviewing that after it was posted on Friday.
Well, good. I was not able to see that with some other things. So I just wanted to make sure, having talked to some of the persons involved with these organizations, Youth Front, they're at 55, application number 55. Is that really the description they gave? I'm confused about what Youth Front is. So what is Youth Front? Because I talked to Pastor David Lee of Guiding Light Baptist Church, and they were the ones who sought tablets for seniors. And that was the amount they requested. But it was under the name of Guiding Light Baptist Church, not Youth Front.
Commissioner Townsend, just a second, and I'll pull up the description for that application.
Okay.
And Commissioner, you said that was application 55?
Well, it's showing here as 55, but on the original edition of this exhibit, the award was 50,000, the request was 50,000, and the detail had to do with requests for 50 tablets for seniors. But what I'm questioning here is Youth Front. That the description and the amount coincides with the application from Guiding Star Missionary Baptist Church, which I see later is application 38, and it's significantly less for $4,439. And the description talks about a variety of things, including veterinary service. So I can assure you Guiding Star Baptist Church has nothing to do with the with veterinary services. So in this case, I'm really making sure that we've got money going to the right requester for the right program.
So the aligned or corrected exhibit reads application 55 Youth Front, received a 47. There was a $50,000 award for a $50,000 ask, and the description of the project or direct aid request was Youth Front was requesting $50,000 to package 150,000 non-perishable meals to distribute in Wyandotte County through our Something to Eat meal packing program.
Okay. And Guiding Star then is showing now asking and receiving how much money and for what purpose?
Get to that one. And Guiding Star Missionary Baptist Church is application number 38. And I'll bring it up on the screen for you. Application number 38, receiving a 43.5 composite score, requesting $4,439, receiving $4,439, requesting funds to provide 50 seniors with tablets. And I believe, if I'm getting the summation right, the tablets were to assist with medical appointments and contacts with their physicians, as well as some technical assistance to help them navigate setting up those tablets.
And you're saying the requested amount was what?
$4,439, application number 38. And Commissioner, if you'd like, as we proceed, I'd be happy to actually pull that application up so the commission members can see it.
Okay. So you're saying that, yeah, okay, that would be great. Their application was not for $50,000.
That's correct. Their original request, as listed here, is $4,439. And that was to provide 50 tablets for seniors within the community.
Okay. Okay. Well, all right. That seems consistent then with what they wanted, what they had identified. The amount was off a bit, but all right. Thank you for that clarification then. I think we got it.
Okay.
Commissioner Burrows?
Thank you, Mayor. I had one question. I see where the harvesters had requested 450 and were awarded 300,000. And then I look down and see the Wyandotte County Economic Development Council requested some additional dollars, 350,000 for harvesters, which gives them a total of 650,000. Is there a reason why we just didn't meet harvesters' initial request and cut WYDEC? I'm just curious as to why the decisions to fund it through two different sources.
Commissioner Burrows, I think that's a really great question. Wyandotte Economic Council, or WYDEC, had initially asked for over $1 million in a request that they pared down pretty significantly on Friday morning, adjusting their request amount to the amount that you see here. So they did slash a lot of elements of their program that they thought either could not be met. And I don't want to speak directly for the agency. I'm reading basically what is off the adjusted amount request that was submitted on Friday. But they significantly cut some services that would be overlap services, as well as cut services because of fear they would not be able to get them completed by the December 30th date. So they had an initial request when they first submitted their application of over $1 million. And then Friday morning pared that down significantly to the amount that you see. And as far as the funding goes, based on, again, the score, the requested funding in the scoring mechanism, and then the discussion amongst the team members on Friday morning, that's how we reached the dollar amounts that you see here today.
Commissioner
So-
Burrows, I would also jump in and just say, I know it's difficult when you're seeing the applications in this format where it's just the entity name listed, but that's where it's important to note that there's a score. So we're not necessarily awarding money to the entity, although we are, but we're awarding for that application. And in fact, we had some entities, as you saw in some of the previous slides, like for education, we had some where multiple applications came from a single entity. So we were scoring the application, not the entity. And so it could be that the information in one application that involved an entity was different kind of service or a different type of setup than was in a different application. So that's sort of clear as mud, but I guess I would just say, keep in mind, we were evaluating the efficacy of the application, not necessarily the entity, as we were going through that scoring process, and the application and what that specific application provided for that entity to do with the money is what was graded and scored.
Well, it just came to my attention that the request for harvesters wasn't granted the full request, but yet others recognize how significant and important harvesters is at this particular time in our community. And I'm in full support of harvesters. I was just curious as to why Wyandotte County Economic Development would choose to ask for the additional dollars for harvesters and ensure that they got it. I'm pleased to see harvesters get the money. I'm just curious as to why we're using two different funding mechanisms to provide the dollars. That's my comment.
Okay, seeing no more questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Philbrook, I move for approval for the 501c3.
Townsend,
McKiernan,
second.
We have a second from Townsend. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Once again, on behalf of the commission and on behalf of our residents, I want to thank you for all the hard work that the committee has put forward on this. I think it served the community well. That concludes our meeting for the evening. Thank you for your attendance. We are adjourned.